Report Town Hall session. Let's see what you're saying before we talk about integrity and wind up on this conversation. Let's bring them up online. Mark Makuda says aspirants are not offering alternatives to the problems the electorates are encountering. We need leaders who will drive the agenda of the common mwananchi. Tunataka kiongozi bora rather than bora kiongozi. Okay. Let's see what else you're saying here on Twitter. Says Agri Wekesa says many aspirants have failed to meet the requirements that IBC has set due to lack of seriousness, and they urge to show qualities of competent leaders of our country, Kenya. Very disappointed. Presidency is not just numbers, but what you have that towards leadership. Okay. Let's see what else you're saying here. Lynette Wasonga says, on your question, yes and no, Trevor. Yes, because Kenya is a sovereign state that deserves and must have a leader for representation. No, because most of them don't have a significant track record of good governance. Okay. Let's see what else you're saying here. Dan Alila says, IBC needs to come out clear and sanitize their register. In my opinion, they should narrow down the contestants to avoid the overcrowding of presidential aspirants. How about Chapter 6, guys? Okay. Let's talk about Chapter 6 in a bit, but also Washika Bena has a question for you, Wanjiru. He says, how does Gikonyo Wanjiru expect Kenyans to make a decision of the two front runners if the civil society that she's part of has already endorsed one presidential candidate?
Great. I like this question. Now, what we did is we have a process which we call election agenda setting. Why? Because in our work, and when we met with Honorable Karua, we had two agendas. One was economic governance and electoral governance. And our two agendas were informed by a manifesto that we had prepared. Why did we prepare a manifesto? Because we identified the numerous issues that have driven us into a debt crisis, into economic mess, and we have solutions to that. And we then realized or determined that we will engage both sides of the political divide to get our issues into their manifesto. Why? Because we are suffering the ravages of the 2013 manifesto that was developed by Jubilee. So, one, we are a little bit late. We'd have wanted to engage earlier, but our process took a while. So we didn't just meet to have tea. We had an agenda, and we intend to meet her and the policy arms again, because we want to convince government that they need to cut their expenditure, that we need tax justice, that we need effective oversight, and the only way they're going to hear us is if we meet them. Now, what our viewers don't know is we meet with political leaders all the time. We've got allies who sit in Parliament, in UDA and in Jubilee. And there are some amazing people who will text, call, meet to share our griefs when things are going on. So as civil society, we don't just sit and do research. We do, that's part of our work. We send memorandums, we go to court, but we also engage with our political leaders when we are reviewing the finance bill, when you're preparing the budget, when there's public participation processes. Why? Because we are trying to build an ideological alliance. And we want to share minds. And you can only share minds by dialoguing. Okay. And, usually we'll do this in a wider setting. A number of people coming on board. There are various ways. It's not a perfect process. So we have met with Honorable Karua. We intend to continue meeting with Azimio. We intend to meet with UDA. We intend to meet with the independents. We're not going to meet everybody. But in the long run, we do intend to work with all like-minded to the extent that we're able, because civil society is resourced a certain way. We are a certain size. We are not, our footprint is a lot bigger than our capacity. So we want to talk to political actors in the same way that the religious have done, in the same way that business have done, and we want to talk to both sides because we believe the imperative for economic recovery falls on both sides of the political divide and of Kenyans. So we must choose leaders that give us good governance, that have good, workable solutions to get us out of the economic slump that we're in.
All right. Jerotich, perception-wise, is there any side of the divide that has somehow passed the integrity test from where you stand? Chapter 6 of the Constitution. It's there in print, bold.
I would say if we were using Chapter 6 as a benchmark, if we were, which we should, because I stand for constitutionalism, I defend the Constitution, and I believe that this is a very important bit. I believe we'd have nobody running at the moment, or maybe just 1 or 2 out of the 55, because I think there have been integrity questions at various levels across the board when it comes to all candidates, especially those who've been in public service, previous leadership, because we've had a chance to see them. Perhaps of the 55, those we've never had a chance to engage with their integrity and their leadership, we might not be fully aware. But everybody now, most major politicians running, and I'm not just saying the president at presidential level. If you look at governors, if you look at senators, if you look at members of parliament, women rep, MCA, many of them have questions around their integrity. And it behooves us, therefore, as the electorate to decide whether we're bringing them back or not. But many people don't pass that test. And that's why I said we're either going to go down the slippery slope of saying so-and-so cannot run, so-and-so cannot run, and so on and so forth, or we're going to agree at some point that we cannot allow perfection to become the enemy of good. Yeah. And we have to work with what we have at this point in time and insist on the full implementation and respect for the Constitution in the next government. But right now, it's questionable. So that's why I said earlier on this hurling of accusations back and forth, but you were caught doing this, you were caught doing that, I was there, you were there, you stole this, you did that. We will never stop. And why didn't we start in 2017, 2018 and say, never again shall we have these people running? We have watched everybody building and growing the momentum of their campaign. We mutter under our breaths, we listen to Nancy Gathungu, we hear scandals, people are in court, some who are impeached are trying to run, etc., etc., and we're just here. So I would say, for me, not as a member of civil society organizations, although I'm a civilian, so I suppose I could be in civil society, but I would say everybody, for me as an active citizen, this is going to be the most important election yet. And this is the first time we have an opportunity using, if we come en masse, middle class, non-middle class, everybody come out and vote, because we'll be able to show whether we believe that that particular candidate passes muster or not. But from where I sit, majority of them do not.
Okay.
But here we are, yet again, as we were in 2017, 2013, 2007, we need to make a break with bad leadership. Kenya is not poor. What Kenya has is poor leadership. And if we can, as the electorate, as Wanjiko, as Wakenya, begin to say, going forward, I will make sure my MCA is somebody I know who represents my interests and is somebody of integrity. Ditto woman rep, ditto member of parliament, ditto senator, ditto governor, ditto the president. So I'm not talking about a six-piece suit or whatever it is they're saying, but I'm saying we have to understand who our leaders are. And we fail to do that because we get lost in the hype, in the jargon, in the posturing, in the attacks, in the slurs, and we forget to actually stop and listen to say, what is this person saying he or she is going to do for me?
Okay. Wanjiru, out of the 55, 37 of them have already been slashed out. The IEBC is only remaining with about 18 of them to give the final verdict on who runs and who doesn't. But has any one of them sort of passed the integrity test, or are we left with the lesser evil, choosing the lesser evil?
Right. Well, IBC's weeding out of the presidential candidates is administrative at this point. It's not on integrity. That's a different conversation. Now, when we look at, and I agree that, and we all agree, and I was very heartened, actually, to see this poll that came out where Kenyans are saying their priority is the economy, is jobs, cost of living. Actually, it's cost of living first. Jobs, then the economy, governance. So I was really, very excited when I see poor governance, bad politics, because Kenyans recognize that these problems are linked to that. But what we are not able to do is to figure out, how do we deal with this poor governance that bedevils our politics, our leadership, and even ourselves? So one is to recognize that we are on our path, and the Constitution seeks to remake Kenya, to transform our institutions. We've had gains and reversals along the way, and some of those gains and reversals come from the political front and also us. So we are trying to change a culture. What have we done? There's Chapter 6. Chapter 6 was designed to deal with the issue of corruption in government, corruption in leadership, the capture of institutions. It was diluted emasculated. The courts actually said, you know, politicians misinterpret the law to serve their own interests. And so as a result, we are struggling with this. Despite this very imperfect scenario, we are hopeful that there are some actions that we can take to improve our electoral outcome. So what have we done? We've launched the Red Card campaign as civil society. We generated a list, and it's a fast list. It's a very incomplete list of 25 individuals who we believe should not be cleared to run. Now, they may be cleared, and then we're going to talk to the public and say, well, you know, don't accept these people. Why? We are saying these people have been cited in reports of Chapter 15 institutions, oversight institutions, for various violations while in public office. So they are not, they don't reach that threshold of leadership. Allow them to first clear their names, then they can run next election. So we are not trying to make it about the individual.
Yeah.
We are trying to make it about the individual's actions. And, you know, would this person who's been cited for abuse of finances, corruption, whatever, would you make them treasurer of your chama?
But it was also a time when everybody is saying that these corruption institutions have been weaponized. So then the people have that as a backing.
Well, you know, at some point, we have to begin trusting our institutions. Yes, the war on corruption has been weaponized. But when you talk about the Auditor General's report, when you talk about the EACC conducting an investigation based on a recommendation of Parliament, you know, that's objective facts. And we must support our oversight institutions. So the idea of weaponization has come in because there's been a lot of subjectivity in who, but where somebody has been cited. And, you know, our list has candidates because the question was, is there one side that's better than the other? We have actually, for whatever reason, more candidates on one particular party than the other. Maybe the levels are slightly different, but it shows that the problem is across the board. And we need to begin supporting, and we need to begin holding to account and rejecting leaders who have questions. Maybe they've been impeached, been forced to resign under a cloud. We need to tell them, first clear your name before you come to run run for public office. The other thing is that wonderful things are happening. Citizens are beginning to vet their leaders.
Yeah.
They are calling their leaders and saying, give us your background. So let's not imagine that citizens are stagnant. We recognize the task of transforming our society from one where corruption is endemic, is deeply ingrained in our culture. It is endorsed at so many levels because, you know, those contributions are made in religious institutions, in churches, and they're accepted. Yeah. Families know their child or their person works in a government office but then owns properties all over, and they allow it. We have a culture of corruption. So unrooting that begins with small action. So let us encourage ourselves and take the little steps that we need to get more good leaders in. So we'll get more good leaders in 2022. In 2027, we'll get even more. So I encourage citizens to vet.
All right.
Last point, and I'm
very briefly.
Yes, very briefly. Leadership is not just at the top. It includes the MCA. So let us vet them right across the board. And the most crucial leaders for our between the elections, those 5 years, are your MCA, your member of parliament, your governor, your women's rep. So let's not just look at the top seat. A lot of power and resources are also on these other seats.
All right, Chirotich, in a minute.
Okay, you know, the red card list is a good list, and it doesn't matter where the person sits. And I completely support it because unlike the running battles between the DCI and ODPP, I would like to imagine, and this is why I pushed really hard the issue of a non-partisan approach, that the red card list is non-partisan. So if you happen to have majority coming from one political coalition versus another, doesn't matter. If you happen to find more corrupt people in one place, just list them because they deserve to go down. If you find them in another place, list them. They deserve to go down. But ultimately, for me, Kenya's political elite has been at war with Wanjiku for far too many years, and that is why, for me, August the 9th, 2022 is a seminal moment in our history, and it behooves each and every one of us, including the undecideds, every single person who is of majority, who has a voter's card, who is registered, should come out and vote, because we are the ones who will turn the tide, not the politicians. The politicians have forced us to dance to their tune for far too long. It now has to be Wanjiku saying, actually, you're going to dance to our tune, and we will hold you accountable, and we will throw you out in 2027 if you don't do what you have promised and what we have tasked you to do. Right. So I think this is a moment for us to step out and take that opportunity as the citizens of this republic and stop being victims, stop being gaslit by a political elite, which is something that we have suffered from for far too many election cycles. All
right, we have to leave it there. Jerotich Sei, active citizen, and Wanjiru Gikonyo, National Coordinator, TISA, the Institute of Social Accountability. And thank you so much for all the feedback that has come through. That's been Money Report. Thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Trevor Mbija. It's always a pleasure having you with us. Have a good night.